Now, mind you, I do this every day and I still did not catch on right away as to what was going on. I don't get headaches, like I said, but I started getting headaches throughout the day. I was needing a nap. I'm normally able to make it through. Now, I am not against, girl, if you need to do a power nap, I am not against napping. It's great to get that feeling again. But I was so unmotivated. And this happened to me during perimenopause. I struggled in the first time going through this where I felt unmotivated with work. I had to work really hard to stay on track. I was distracted just to even do housework or yard work, very unmotivated. When my hormone levels were brought up to an optimal level, I felt like I could do anything. I had energy to make it through the day. I was sleeping through the night, working out and running, no pains and aches. I'm your host, Kim Hines, and welcome to the Emotional Eats podcast. I'm on a mission to show you that what you consume, not just the food, affects your entire life. Midlife is different. Let's dig into the real reasons why you eat when you're not hungry and why you're not feeling well. My guests and I are going to give you doable solutions and help you let go of perfectionism, food rules, and stress to make changes that will last a lifetime. If you're ready to ditch old school diet culture and nourish your entire life, this is the show for you. Welcome to episode 56 of the Emotional Eats podcast. I went through perimenopause twice. Actually, that's not something that can happen, but I wanted to share with you why I felt like I went through perimenopause, even though I am postmenopausal. Some of my clients and friends have also gone through this. So I wanted to give you some information in case it happens to you. I also explain what perimenopause is and go through so many of the symptoms so that you can understand that all of these things that are happening to you are not your fault. It's a change in your hormones and everything. You know, we talk mostly about hot flashes and weight gain, but there are so many other symptoms that I list in there that you might connect with and now understand that this has to do with the drop in estrogen as opposed to you doing something wrong. And also to share that even if you're postmenopausal, if you're not keeping up with what's going on with your hormones, you can feel like you're going through it all over again. And that is what happened to me. I look forward to hearing what you think about this. If you've gone through it, reach out on Instagram at Kim Hines Health and enjoy the show. Hi, and welcome to the Emotional Eats podcast. If you're new, welcome. I'm Kim, your host. And if you're coming back, thank you so much for tuning in again and listening. If you read the title of this episode, it talks about me going through perimenopause twice. And if you're postmenopausal, you're like, this episode's not for me, but I am postmenopausal. And I wanted to share a very personal experience that just happened. And then as I was sharing it with other women, a couple other women in my life have gone through it recently too. So I was hoping that through this episode, I could help you find some solutions if you're finding the same thing is happening to you. And technically, by the way, you don't go through perimenopause twice, but it certainly feels like it when you find out what happened to me. So I want to share this really personal experience because, again, if you're going through this, it will explain a lot of the symptoms or behaviors that you are dealing with. And I also want to just reshare what perimenopause is. We have some amazing episodes that I've done with menopause experts. So please go back and look through those episodes. There's so many, I can't even begin to name them all off for you. But there are coaches, there are menopause doulas. There are so many wonderful people who are sharing really important information. And I'll share 2 doctors also as we go through the episode. But let's talk about what is perimenopause and the first and really the only time you go through it. But you may feel these symptoms again later, even when you're postmenopausal. But in our 30s, it could be mid to late 30s, this could start or later. And it could last for any number of years. Everyone seems to be very different, but perimenopause is that transitional period before menopause. So as we are getting older and our body's starting to understand that we're not reproducing anymore, we have this drop in estrogen and also, for some of us, progesterone. And so I'm mostly going to talk about estrogen and progesterone, but also some people have a drop in testosterone, and I did with that too, but mostly estrogen and progesterone. So when we produce less estrogen, there are some symptoms that come with that. And there could be any number of symptoms. I've probably found, 50 to 100 different symptoms that people have shared with me. So if you're going through these things, you might be thinking it has something to do with you and something you're doing, but it really could just be this transitional period before menopause. And so before I go through the symptoms, let's talk about the fact that perimenopause, um, it is the transition up to menopause, which is when you have not had a menstrual cycle or period for 12 months. And then immediately after that, you are postmenopausal. So menopause itself is like just pretty much that day where you stop having a period for 12 months and then you're postmenopausal. So we see online a lot about the night sweats and the hot flashes, which is a real thing. When I went through it the first time, I would keep a t-shirt under my pillow. And I've shared this story before because I didn't want to get up in the middle of the night and change my shirt. But because of that drop in estrogen, those hot flashes are real. Obviously, during perimenopause, there's irregular periods. That is where your body is, maybe you're not having them as close together, or you're having them super close together, or they're heavier or lighter. So it's very hard to tell what's going on during perimenopause with your periods. Sleep problems start. And when estrogen and progesterone are low, sleep, that was one of my big indicators, is I just was not sleeping through the night. And, we blame it on all kinds of other things. Back at that time, I was also still drinking alcohol. And maybe I had other things that I, had on my mind with the business or whatever. So I didn't put it all together. And that really mostly was due to that drop in estrogen. Mood changes. This is my favorite. Not my husband's, but this is my favorite. Irritability, anxiety, depression. We don't talk about that a lot with perimenopause, but we do have these mood changes and we do start feeling kind of ragey sometimes, or we feel depressed or anxious. And again, women are putting this on themselves, like there's something wrong with them. And if we are not sharing with you and educating with you that this could be a sign of perimenopause, it feels hopeless. But we have a lot of things that we can do about this now. So just want to share that that is a major symptom. I for sure felt like I almost needed to go on anti-anxiety medication. And there are people in my life that I shared are going through this right now, even postmenopausally, and I will explain why. But they were considering going on medication before we really talked about the hormones first. Vaginal dryness, loss of breast fullness. We have changes in libido. When you drop in estrogen, and also testosterone, we definitely feel less inclined to have sex. The libido drops. And that is one of the signs of perimenopause. And concentration, memory, and brain fog. I struggled to even find words. I would be in the middle of a sentence and a very common, simple word would not come to my mind. I shared in another episode that I even felt like sometimes in my mind, I felt like I was almost slurring my words. And other people said they didn't notice it, but my brain was jumbling things. And that was definitely in the height of my perimenopause. I do not normally get headaches, but I got more headaches during that time. This is a symptom that I did not know about, but joint and muscle aches and pains. I had those. I thought I was working out too hard or I was getting weak. I wasn't able to lift as much. And that drop in those hormones really contributed to that. Weight gain around the middle. and that came on really fast. There was probably about 8 pounds that just out of nowhere showed up. A lot of people have hair loss or thinning hair. I have so much hair that I did not notice that as much, but my hairdresser did. She felt like it was coming out a lot easier. Some people have dizziness or almost a feeling of vertigo. Incontinence, problems with the pelvic floor, breast tenderness, urine leakage, racing heart. That was another one that went along with the anxiety, constant fatigue, needing to take a nap in the afternoon, massive emotional eating, feeling like digging into the food all the time, and cravings were increased. So there's so many more symptoms. So if you're questioning something and you're going through perimenopause, or you're even postmenopausal and you were okay for a while and then all of a sudden you're feeling some of these things, let's talk. Because when we go through perimenopause, there are a lot of things changing, and some doctors will test you. This is very important. Some doctors will test you, do blood work to find out if that estrogen is dropping or progesterone. And they have an opportunity then to share with you bioidentical hormones. So, interestingly, I'm going to touch upon this just very lightly because I want to make sure that you do your own research. But there are so many women who are afraid of hormone therapy right now. And it's understandable because, especially the generation after me, women who are in their 70s, late 60s, 70s. So, what happened was in the the early 2000s, there was a study, the Women's Health Initiative study came out with some scary information on hormone therapy. And I encourage you to go and do your research and don't just take it from me. But they found out that there were some issues with that study. And now when they look at bioidenticals, we're finding so many benefits. And I am not quoting this from research or science. This is just a Kim conversation. But from the conversations that I have with people that I trust that are doctors, we're finding that it's actually the opposite. And they've done the research that this is helping to fight off cancers, women's cancers, and heart disease, and helping hormone therapy is helping even with insulin resistance. So I am just putting this off to the side for you to think about with hormone therapy, because if we're missing that estrogen, missing the progesterone, missing testosterone, our hormones in our bodies, we have up to around 50 hormones in our body. So think about, we have, I'll just name some other ones so you know what I'm talking about. We have cortisol, that's stress hormone, fight or flight. We have the insulin, which is one of the most important things that we look at. We have serotonin, dopamine that have to do with our feelings and our reward system. We have so many different hormones. Thyroid has probably 5 different hormones in there that we look at. We have so many different hormones. And if you take 3 of them that were pretty relevant in our lives, and then all of a sudden they drop, there's a change in our whole makeup and our whole system. And that's why I found it very important to explore hormone therapy. So again, this is Kim anecdotally, and I'm also going to share that the clients that I'm working with who have chosen this, I don't talk them into it, but I just ask them to do the research and share what I do know, and some very credible people to talk to about it. So if you are just even wanting to know more from a doctor's point of view, listen to episode 39 with Dr. Eric Fate. He is a specialist in this area with bioidenticals. Dr. Jay Wrigley in episode 31 also mentions it. And we have other doctors in these podcast episodes that will share their thoughts on hormone therapy. And if you go back and listen to the other episodes with the coaches and the doula, it's very apparent that we are in a different space of how we feel about the safety and the benefits of hormone therapy. So I'm just sharing during the perimenopause, those were the things that happened to me, and I really didn't understand it. So getting tested. Remember, I mentioned getting tested is so important because you don't want to just randomly take something unless you know where you stand. So when I went through all of that and I became postmenopausal, I worked with hormone specialists to up the levels that had dropped. I was basically at zero, I think, on estrogen and progesterone. My testosterone just needed a little bit of a bump. But what I will tell you, in all honesty, it took me probably 6 months or so to really get the levels right because they were so low. They really needed to be, um, brought back to a decent level, and then they could be optimized to a better level. So I wanted to share with you what happened to me recently, though, because that was experience one. Postmenopausal for a couple years now, I've been, or more. I can't even remember how long I've been on hormone therapy, but I've been on bioidentical estrogen, estradiol, and testosterone and progesterone. So I'm not trying to lean you in that direction. I just want you to do your due diligence and check it out if you're having some very severe symptoms. So I've been doing that for a number of years. Everything was great. It was all wonderful. And recently, um, I just went through all of these symptoms again. All of a sudden, I was getting the weight gain in the middle, and I thought, oh, maybe I'm just not paying attention to my food and I'm emotionally eating. And then I realized I was emotionally eating more. For some reason, my cravings were so much higher. When I was working out, my muscles were not recovering well. My joints felt awful, and I like to run. So all of a sudden, my joints were feeling stiffer and feeling more like they were achy all the time. I was starting to get a little bit of sleep issue. I was waking up at 3 in the morning again, my brain fog. Now, mind you, I do this every day, and I still did not catch on right away as to what was going on. I don't get headaches, like I said, but I started getting headaches throughout the day. I was needing a nap. I'm normally able to make it through. Now, I am not against, girl, if you need to do a power nap, I am not against napping. It's great to get that feeling again. But I was so unmotivated. And this happened to me during perimenopause. I struggled in the first time going through this where I felt unmotivated with work. I had to work really hard to stay on track. I was distracted just to even do housework or yard work, very unmotivated. When my hormone levels were brought up to an optimal level, I felt like I could do anything. I had energy to make it through the day. I was sleeping through the night, working out and running, no pains and aches. I felt like $1 million basically. So as I'm going through this just recently again with all of these symptoms, feeling very unmotivated, trying to figure out what was wrong with me, feeling a little bit depressed, definitely more anxiety, feeling jumpy, I got tested because I get tested regularly. And for some reason, we'll talk about this too. For some reason, my estrogen had plummeted. It had plummeted. And I'm not giving you any numbers for a very specific reason. Not giving you any numbers because I know that every single person is an individual. And people will ask me, my clients will ask me, what level should I be at? Uh, that is not something I can share with you because your body's different and how depleted you are is different from me, which is very depleted when it comes to these three hormones usually. And you have to get tested and tested regularly to look at that. So, interestingly enough, I also was becoming more insulin resistant. So what does that mean? I would eat food that I normally could eat and have no problem with my blood sugar, and I would use my glucometer to test because I could tell something was going on, and my blood sugar was so much higher and taking longer to come down. So it's really interesting. All of this happens in perimenopause. And then when my estrogen plummeted in postmenopause, I literally felt like I was going through perimenopause for the second time. And I am so blessed to have a great hormone specialist that can talk through this with me and say, hey, look, this is it. This is the reason why. And let's just, let's get it right back up there again. And it took a little while. I had to have a stronger prescription for a while. But I'll tell you what happened to me. There are different ways that you can take hormones. You can take them orally. I use for progesterone, I use an oral capsule. And for the estradiol and the testosterone, I have creams and I have them separate. So if anybody's on the creams, the reason why I have them separate and not together, they're compounded, is because if one or the other gets out of whack, like this time, then I only have to deal with one and I don't have to wonder what's going on with the other one. I have my testosterone's fine. So I could leave that the way it was, and then the estrogen we could play with and move it up. Some people like the pellets, and that's a very personal choice. I'm not going to talk to which method is better. I personally chose the creams just so I could have more control over, when it changes, and talk through all of that with your hormone specialist or your doctor. That is a very, very personal choice. So the reason why I'm going to tell you what happened to me with the creams, the reason why I think it dropped is because I was putting it in a different spot than I normally do. Some people like to change the spot of where they put their creams, and I changed it up just to see, and it did not work. But here's the other thing. I also felt like I wasn't necessarily eating as much whole, clean, unprocessed food and less sugar during that time. So I'm wondering if this is a Kim thought. I'm wondering if for some reason, if my gut health wasn't as healthy, if maybe that's another reason why I didn't absorb it well. Because I do know that that is a situation with other things in my system, that if I don't absorb them well, it's usually because my gut might be off. Speaking of gut being off, one of the other things that tipped me off to get my blood work done again with the hormones is constipation, because, and this is TMI, but I'm a health coach and this is what I do all day, every day with clients. But I did notice, just like perimenopause, I was constantly constipated. And for me, that does come with having really low estrogen. So I was doing a full on repeat of perimenopause, even though I've been postmenopausal for years. So the similarities are so striking between the first time I went through it and the second time. The reason why things are different the second time, it's not truly perimenopause, by the way, when you're postmenopausal going through it, is literally just because perimenopause is that exact time before menopause and before your menstrual cycles stop. But the symptoms are exactly the same because of the low estrogen. So that's the only difference is the fact that I am postmenopausal. The similarities are the same with all of the symptoms that I had. And ironically, the same symptoms that I personally had came back. So that's clearly how my body reacts to having too low of estrogen. So I just wanted to share that with you. So if you're going through any of those symptoms and they're compiling and you're putting the blame on yourself for example, emotional eating, this is one of the things that could be happening to you. You could be having a hormonal imbalance that's making it very hard for you to stop the emotional eating or the binge eating. And if you're feeling out of control with food or cravings, there could be a lot going on with the hormones. Because again, if the hormones are causing you more stress in your body, you're not sleeping and you're fatigued. And as you listen to all of my episodes on emotional eating, you know there's a huge list of things that could be contributing, and it's nothing to do with you not sticking to a diet, you not having willpower or having control. It literally could be a physiological thing going on in your body. So I wanted to share that with you today and find out if those are things that you have gone through. So if this resonates with you, and hopefully this will give you some ideas, I'd love to hear from you on Instagram at Kim Hines Health. You can always go through to the show notes, and there's many ways to reach out to me in the show notes. And let me know, just send me a message and let me know if you're dealing with this, because we can even sit down on a free 30-minute call and I can get you pointed in the right direction. But before you do anything, if you're dealing with this, the number one thing I recommend is going to a specialist and getting tested, because we don't know until we see those results. And then while you're getting that tested, also throw in your, cholesterol, A1C, and thyroid and vitamin D levels, some of those other things, just to check and make sure that you are in range for everything else also, because it all ties together. And remember, as women in midlife, we get to change and rewire how we look at things. It's not just about diet culture anymore. We are focusing on health over being skinny, because guess what? The weight loss is a byproduct of working on all these health measures. The hormones, the insulin resistance, all of the things that we're working on are actually going to lead in that direction, because losing weight does not mean that you are healthy. But if you chase the health, most likely your body will fall in line with that. So thank you so much for listening. I look forward to hearing from you, and nourish your entire life and give yourself grace today. That's it. Thank you so much for tuning into the Emotional Eats podcast, the podcast that's here to help you feel amazing, strong, energetic, and healthy holistically in your mind and your body. But my guest and I also want to help you build great habits to help you with long-term mental and physical health, so that you can lean into aging in a very positive and strong way. Check out my website, kimhines.com, and please come see me on Instagram at kimhineshealth. That's where I leave tips for healthy life, healthy body, healthy relationship with food. And I also am there to encourage you, and I love to hear from you. So tag me and let me know what you like about the show and what you want to hear more about. Check out the show notes for all the details. Make sure to rate and review the podcast. And until our next time together, nourish your entire life and give yourself grace today.